could better live without them. And there is no capitalist system that's going to carry on the burden of millions of people. It will see you dead before it will see itself dragged into the ground. White folk are not going to see a decline in their power or a decline in their dominance because they're taking care of black folk. I want you to make that very clear. If they have to make a choice between being number one in the world and top dog in the world and carrying a bunch of black folk on their back, there's no choice at all. The decision is already made in the question. They're going to rid themselves of you like any other people in their right minds will do. And so let's continue. You got to face the hard reality. It's only a brainwashed Negro that will sacrifice himself to other people. But what, and it goes on, but what many skilled workers are getting now are low-wage, low-skilled, lousy jobs. In the view of people at the union's executive council meeting here, the middle class that emerged in the bustling economy of the 50s and 60s is sliding into the ranks of the working poor. The skilled two-worker, two-job family with generous health and pension benefits is becoming the unskilled two-worker, 2, 3, and 4 part-time job family without benefits. And it goes on here. But let's look at the African situation right quickly, as depicted by the Urban League. As they look at the nature of what is happening in America. This article is titled African Americans in the 21st Century Labor Market. We're speaking now of the 21st century. Improving the Fit by Billy J. Tidwell. He writes here that the implications of these trends, the kind of trends that I've just mentioned, along with others, are at once promising and perilous, referring to African people. On one hand, the changing demography of the labor force may combine with the mountain centrality of human resources to expand opportunity for the group. What he's saying here is, due to the fact that white folks and their population is not growing at such a high rate, and that in the 21st century there will be more non-whites in America than whites, that may mean an opportunity for black folk, since they may have to hire more black folk to continue to run the country than they did in the past. But that is based on an assumption. And we've already talked about how this assumption can be knocked out. Simply because there will be more black folk and more Latinas and so forth than whites does not necessarily mean that the opportunity structure will open up for us. It may mean, as I mentioned earlier, that the country will simply ship in more immigrants, you see, to take the jobs, or, as what is happening, it will ship out the jobs, you see, and just give the jobs to other ethnic groups in other nations and in other places. So you can't sit back and say, well, we're going to be the majority in the 21st century, and there are going to be more people of color in America than there will be white folk. So America will have to hire us because there ain't enough white folk to run the place. Yeah, okay, you believe that if you wish. America is already demonstrating that it will move those jobs around and move those industries around in other places. Not only is it moving the industrial jobs around, it is moving the brain jobs around. The engineering jobs, the research jobs, the scientific jobs. This country now is beginning to get its major research and developmental work being done by Indians in India, by people in Malaysia, because these people produce a much higher level of engineers and others than even American whites are producing, and particularly American blacks are producing. Many major American corporations now are beginning to ship even their headquarters into other countries. Okay, so not even the major headquarters will be located in the United States. So there are tremendous changes going on, and these changes point to great dangers. He goes on to say, on the other hand, as intimated, the contemporary labor market is much different from that which existed during the heyday of industrialism, when one's pursuit of economic well-being was well served by physical muscle. In the new era, intellectual muscle, that is the ability to think analytically, compute, comprehend instructions, make decisions, communicate clearly, interact effectively in group endeavor, is the ticket to prosperity. In this connection, there continues to be an unsettling lack of conversion, that is, of a coming together between where black folk are and where we need to be. In a bad fit between the overall conditions of African Americans and the human capital that the changing economy needs. In other words, we're not in the right place. One writer has made this point in stark, poignant terms. Black Americans have outlived their usefulness. Their raison d'etre, that is their usefulness, their reason for being, to this society has ceased to be a compelling issue. Once an economic asset, they are now considered an economic drag. The wood is all hewn, the water all drawn, the cotton all picked, and the rails reach from coast to coast. The ditches are all dug and the dishes are all put away, and only a few shoes remain to be shined. Okay? So people are very clear about where we are. He goes on to say, at the same time, the analysis leaves no doubt that African Americans must be much more astute and proactive on behalf of their own development and participation in the economic mainstream. Jacob, who heads the Urban Leagues, made this statement: African American children must be trained to see and seize opportunity in the chaos of the changing domestic marketplace. We must develop a new mindset. In the light of time, I won't go through some of the other things they indicate here to point to the nature of what is going on in this economy. I just want to read just a couple of other things because I really want you to seriously look at this situation here. What does the industrial restructuring portend for African Americans in the future? The prospects are less than sanguine. I mean, less than disturbing. They're quite disturbing. African Americans continue to be greatly dependent on the manufacturing sector, accounting for more than 10% of all manufacturing workers in 1991. Hence, there is a bad fit between the current distribution of the African American workforce and the reconfiguring industrial base. In other words, African Americans, in terms of where we are in the labor force today, we are in the very areas that will be strength to the greatest degree tomorrow. We are all almost sitting in the wrong position to take advantage of the nature of the restructuring of this economy. We're sitting in the kind of jobs and being trained for the kind of jobs that essentially will not exist, or very few of which will exist in the future. In any event, the restructuring of the economy's industrial base has brought disproportionate hardship to the African American workforce. Under present conditions, there is little reason to expect this circumstance to improve. The parallel pattern of occupational changes could have even more ominous implications for our people. So here we are in a very serious pass as a people. We'll just quote you one more. After looking at the kinds of jobs that are projected to be more plentiful between the years 1990 and the year 2005, again, the fit is not very good, talking about our people again. African Americans are greatly underrepresented in the fastest growing occupations and overrepresented by those having the slowest projected growth. For example, in 1991, African Americans accounted for just 9% of the employed workforce in the front-running technical and related support occupations, which are expanding at a 37% rate. By contrast, the African American share of the shrinking operators, fabricators, and laborers group has nearly 4 times the minimum 4% growth rate for these occupations. And so again, we are in the wrong place at the wrong time. In short, the shifting